I drove back from my cardiologist's appointment alone, the way I always do things now, and I almost didn't go home that afternoon. My doctor had cleared me. 6 weeks post-surgery, heart strong, blockage gone, the kind of news that should make a man want to celebrate. But I sat in the parking lot of the medical center in Savannah for a good 20 minutes, just watching people come and go through those glass doors. Something felt off. I couldn't name it. I just knew that the feeling in my chest had nothing to do with my heart. My name is Lawrence. I'm 64 years old. I spent 31 years building a chain of hardware and lumber supply stores across coastal Georgia and South Carolina. 7 locations. Started with one store my father left me in Brunswick, a place that was barely breaking even, and turned it into something that generated close to $12 million a year. I'm not telling you that to brag. I'm telling you so you understand what was at stake when the people I trusted most decided they knew better than me what to do with everything I'd built. My wife is Barbara. We've been married 37 years. She's 61, sharp as anyone I've ever met, ran the bookkeeping for our first 3 stores herself while raising our daughter. Our daughter is Meredith. She's 34. She studied business at the University of Georgia, which I paid for. She married a man named Clifton 8 years ago. Clifton works in commercial real estate, or at least that's what he calls it. Mostly he makes phone calls from expensive restaurants and talks about deals that never quite seem to close. The surgery had been unexpected. A routine physical in late August caught something on my EKG that my regular doctor didn't like. 2 weeks later, I was in the OR at Memorial Health. It went well, but it shook me. Not the surgery itself. The reaction of the people around me. Meredith had cried the right amount. She'd visited twice during my recovery, but there was something in her eyes during those visits I couldn't quite read, a kind of measuring, like she was calculating something. I told myself I was being paranoid. A man who almost lost his life on a table has a right to read shadows into things. I pushed it down and focused on getting better. Barbara had been attentive, more attentive than usual, actually. She was always warm, but this felt different. Softer. Too soft. The kind of soft that comes from guilt, not love, though I didn't recognize it as that at the time. During my 6 weeks of recovery, I'd stayed mostly at home, resting like my doctor ordered. Barbara had been handling the stores, which made sense. She knows the business. But she'd also been taking calls at strange hours, stepping out onto the back porch to talk. When I asked about it, she said it was vendors. End of quarter stuff, nothing to worry about. I believed her. The day my doctor cleared me, I planned to call ahead, let her know I'd gotten good news and was coming home. Something stopped me. That same something that kept me in the parking lot for 20 minutes. On instinct, I just drove. I turned onto our street, a quiet road outside of Pooler, big houses set back from the road, old oak trees. Our house is at the end. Barbara had the windows open. I could see light in the kitchen and in my home office, which I hadn't been in since before the surgery. My office. I parked at the far end of the driveway and walked up quietly. I'm not sure why. Maybe some part of me already knew. I came in through the side door that connects to the garage and I heard voices, not just Barbara. Clifton's voice. That particular smooth, careful voice he uses when he's trying to convince someone of something. I stopped in the hallway. She's going to need his signature on the operating agreement. That was Clifton. Once that's done, the restructure is clean. Control moves to the new LLC. What do we tell him it's for, Meredith? Tax efficiency. Estate planning. It's not even a lie, not really. At his age, after the surgery, it makes complete sense to restructure. Any accountant would recommend it. And when he actually looks at the documents, he won't. Not if your mother presents it. He trusts her. A pause. And if he does read them, we explain it's protective, that we're looking out for him. I stood there with my car keys still in my hand. My office. They were in my office going through the filing cabinets. I could hear the drawers opening and closing. I didn't walk in. I want to be clear about that. Something held me back and I'm grateful for it, because what I did instead was take out my phone and I recorded. 11 minutes. Clear audio. Clifton walking Meredith through the structure of a new LLC that would hold controlling interest in my stores. Barbara mostly quiet, asking a few questions but not objecting. Not once saying, "We need to wait until Lawrence is well and discuss this with him." At one point, Meredith said, "I feel bad about the timing." And Clifton said, "The timing is the point, sweetheart. He's vulnerable. He's relieved. He just wants things to feel normal." That's when people sign things without reading them. I walked back out through the garage. I sat in my truck for 45 minutes. The sun went down. I watched the lights in my house through the windshield. My house, 31 years of work, 7 stores, 42 employees, and my own daughter's husband explaining to my wife how to use my medical vulnerability as leverage to take it from me. The fury I felt was not hot. That's the thing people don't understand about this kind of betrayal. It doesn't burn, it goes cold, it gets very, very still. And in that stillness I started to think clearly. I had a friend named Wesley, a corporate attorney in Savannah, who'd helped me structure the business years ago. I called him from the truck. He picked up on the third ring. "I need to see you tonight," I said. "It's not optional." He heard something in my voice. "I'll be at the office in 30 minutes. I also called a man named Pete, who had managed IT and security for my stores for 12 years. Former Army, methodical, not a man who asks unnecessary questions. "Pete, I need you to pull access logs from the main business server tonight, everything accessed in the last 6 weeks while I was out, and I need you not to mention this to anyone at the office." "Yes, sir." Done by morning. Then I drove to Wesley's office and I laid everything out. The recording, what I'd seen, what I suspected had been happening during my recovery. Wesley listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "Lawrence, you understand what they were planning would have been legal once you signed." "I know. And that the window to stop it is right now before any documents are filed." "I know that too. That's why I'm here." We worked until nearly midnight. Wesley drafted a resolution from me as sole owner and president of the business, reaffirming that no restructuring, no transfer of interest, no new entity formation involving company assets would be valid without notarized authorization from me alone, and that any existing power of attorney, of which Barbara held a limited one for medical purposes during my recovery, was hereby revoked in full. He had a notary he trusted come to the office at 11 p.m. I signed everything in front of her. Then we went further. Wesley helped me establish a proper revocable living trust, one I should have set up years ago, placing all business assets and property under the trust with me as trustee and a corporate trust company as successor, not Barbara, not Meredith. It couldn't be undone by anyone but me. I also called Wesley's recommendation, a family law attorney named Patricia. No, wait, I need to think of this differently. Her name was Suzanne. I called Suzanne the next morning to understand what my options were going forward with respect to my marriage. Pete's report came in at 7 a.m. by encrypted email. The main server had been accessed 14 times over 6 weeks using Barbara's login credentials, financial projections, store valuations, tax records, customer databases, documents I use when selling or acquiring locations, all opened, several downloaded. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and read it twice while Barbara slept. She came downstairs at 8. She smiled when she saw me. "You're up early. How did it go at the doctor's yesterday?" "He cleared me," I said. "Good news all around." "Oh, that's wonderful." She set her hand on my shoulder and I let her. "I'm so glad. I came home right after," I said. Came in through the garage. Something shifted in her face, just slightly. Like a muscle she'd been holding relaxed and then tightened again immediately. "I must have been out," she said. "I didn't hear the car." "No," I said. "You were busy." She poured herself coffee and I watched her hands and I knew that she knew. And she knew that I knew. And neither of us said anything else for a long moment. "I think we need to talk," I said finally. "Not just you and me, with lawyers present, because I want to understand exactly what's been happening in my business while I was recovering, and I want to do it the right way." She set her mug down. Her face did something complicated that I can't fully describe even now. Part of it was shame. Part of it was relief. Part of it, I think, was grief. Though at the time I was too angry to care which was which. "Lawrence, not now," I said. When we have lawyers. Meredith and Clifton arrived that Saturday, invited for what they believed was a family lunch. They arrived cheerful, Clifton in his usual blazer, Meredith with flowers she picked up from a farmer's market. I had not told them what was coming. Wesley was already seated at the dining room table. Suzanne was beside him. Clifton saw them and stopped in the doorway. His face went through 3 expressions in about 2 seconds. "Dad," Meredith said carefully. "Sit down," I said, "both of you." I let Wesley do most of the talking. He laid out what I had, the recording, the server access logs, the documents they'd pulled, the LLC structure Clifton had drafted that would have handed operational control to Meredith while leaving my name on the liability. He was methodical. No drama, just facts. Clifton tried twice to speak, and Wesley asked him politely but firmly to wait. When Wesley finished, Clifton said, "This is a mischaracterization. We were exploring options to protect the estate in the event I died," I said. "You can say it, in the event of incapacitation, or you used the word vulnerable," I said. "I have it recorded. You said, and I'm quoting you directly, 'He's vulnerable. He's relieved.' That's when people sign things without reading them. That's not estate planning, Clifton. That's predatory." The room went quiet. Meredith was looking at her hands. She wasn't crying yet, but she was close. "What's done here," Wesley said, "is that as of 2 days ago, all business assets are in an irrevocable trust. There is no mechanism by which that trust can be altered except by Lawrence himself while he's living and competent. The LLC you drafted has no legal standing and will never have legal standing. The power of attorney Barbara held has been revoked. And if any attempt is made to file documents related to the entity Clifton described, or to access business records without Lawrence's explicit written authorization, we move forward with legal action for attempted fraud and breach of fiduciary duty." Clifton sat back in his chair. The confidence left him like air from a punctured tire. "And the marriage?" Meredith asked quietly. She was looking at me now. "That's between your mother and me," I said. Barbara spoke for the first time since they'd sat down. "Meredith." Her voice was tight. "I told you this wasn't the right way. You didn't stop it," I said, not angry, just factual. She looked at the table. "No, I didn't." They left an hour later, Clifton without making eye contact. Meredith stopped at the door and looked back at me and said, "Dad, I'm sorry." And I believed her, partly. The same way you believe someone who is sorry they got caught, but isn't yet sure whether they're sorry for what they did. What followed was the hardest year of my life. Harder than the surgery. Harder than the years when the business almost didn't make it. Back in the 90s when lumber prices collapsed, and I was within 60 days of closing. Barbara and I separated in January. She moved into a rental property we owned over in Tybee Island. We didn't file for divorce immediately. Suzanne advised patience. There was a lot to untangle, and rushing it wouldn't help either of us. In the space of that separation, I had to face things I didn't want to face, not just about Barbara and Meredith, about myself. I had not been present. Not really. I had been at the business. I had been building and acquiring and managing and growing. I'd given Meredith everything she asked for without requiring much of anything in return, except good grades and a certain image of success. Clifton was, in many ways, a version of what Meredith had always wanted from life. Someone who moved through the world assuming abundance was his right. I had fed that assumption for 30 years without meaning to. That didn't excuse what they'd done, but it sat with me. I turned it over at night. I'd lie awake in the house that suddenly felt enormous, and I'd think about the ways I had been absent, while technically present. What does a man build if the people he builds it for never learn to build anything themselves? Meredith called twice in the first month. I didn't answer, not out of cruelty. I just wasn't ready to hear apologies I didn't yet know were genuine. She wrote me a letter in February. Not an email, an actual letter, handwritten, 6 pages. She'd mailed it to the office because she wasn't sure I'd open anything she sent to the house. I read it standing at my desk with the door closed. She didn't make excuses. That was the first thing I noticed. She explained how Clifton had framed it to her, how he'd made it sound protective, logical, even loving. How she'd told herself it was for the family. But she also wrote, and this is the part that stayed with me, "I knew it was wrong when he said the timing. I knew it, and I didn't say anything, and I've asked myself every day since why. I think I wanted to believe I deserved something I hadn't earned. And that's not Clifton's fault. That's mine. I set the letter on my desk and I didn't move for a while. I didn't call her back that week, or the next. I wasn't ready to let the letter be enough. Words are easy to put on paper. I'd learned that. Meredith and Clifton separated in March. She called to tell me, and this time I answered. He blamed you, she said. He said if you hadn't found out, everything would have been fine. I told him that was the most revealing sentence he'd ever said to me. I didn't respond to that right away. Are you working? I asked. I got a position with a property management company. It's not much. I'm learning the industry from scratch, and honestly, Dad, it's good, it's hard, and it's good. All right, I said. That's it? That's it? All right, for now, I said. That's all I've got. She accepted that. That told me something. Over the next year, I watched from a careful distance. I had a contact at the property management company. Nothing I arranged, just someone I knew from the Chamber of Commerce, who happened to mention Meredith's name in passing one afternoon. Your daughter's working for Sandoval Properties. You know her? I said yes. Good worker, he said. Shows up early, asks questions, doesn't pretend to know things she doesn't know. That told me something too. A year and a half after the afternoon I came home early from the cardiologist, Barbara called and asked if we could meet, not with lawyers, just the two of us at a diner we'd been going to for 30 years over on Abercorn Street. I said yes. She looked different. Smaller somehow, though she hadn't lost weight. She'd dropped something she'd been carrying, I thought, but what she'd dropped had cost her. I have to tell you something, she said, not as an excuse, as an explanation, because I think you deserve an explanation, even if it doesn't change anything. All right. I was scared, she said. She said after the surgery, more scared than I showed you. I kept thinking about what happens to this family if you're not here, if there's another surgery and it doesn't go as well. And Clifton was there with his plans and his logic and his way of making everything sound reasonable. And I told myself I was protecting us, but I knew. She pressed her hands flat on the table. I knew it was wrong to do it behind your back, and I did it anyway. And I am sorry, Lawrence, not for being scared, but for what I did with that fear. I looked at her across that table, and I thought about 37 years. About the first store, the two of us working through the night doing inventory. About Meredith at 5 years old falling asleep in the break room because neither of us had found a babysitter. About things you don't build in one lifetime but in many ordinary days stacked up over decades. I hear you, I said. That's not the same as forgiveness. No, I said, it's not, but it's honest. We talked for 2 hours. I can't say the conversation fixed anything, but it was real. More real than anything we'd said to each other in probably the last 5 years, and that fact alone told me something about how long things had been quietly going wrong. 2 years after that afternoon in the driveway, I began thinking about what came next. Not forgiveness as a feeling, because feelings aren't something you can decide to have, but forgiveness as a decision, an action. Meredith was 18 months into her job and had been promoted twice. I heard this from the contact, not from her. She hadn't told me, which I appreciated. She wasn't building a case. I asked her to meet me for coffee on a Tuesday morning at a place near her office in Savannah. She came in 5 minutes early. She was dressed simply, working clothes, not the carefully curated look she used to carry into every room like a credential. I'm not offering you money, I said when she sat down. I'm not offering a position in the company. I'm not changing the trust. I know, she said. I'm not here for that. Then what are you here for? She thought about it. Then what are you here for? She thought about it. To see if there's something left between us, if there's anything I haven't already broken. I studied her face the way you study the face of someone you used to know very well, and are trying to decide if you still know at all. There's something left, I said. But Meredith, it won't look like it used to. It can't. I don't want it to look like it used to, she said. What we had before wasn't honest. I wasn't honest. I was performing for you, showing you the version of myself I thought you wanted, and resenting you privately for the standard I thought you wanted, and resenting you privately for the standard I thought you were setting. That wasn't real. This is harder, but it's real. That was the sentence that moved something in me, not dramatically, not like a wall coming down, more like a door opening an inch. We started slowly, coffee once a month, then dinner occasionally. I met her daughter, my granddaughter, Nina, 8 months old at the time, eyes wide and completely unaware of the years of mess behind her. Nina changed something in Barbara too. The two of them began talking again, first for Nina's sake and then for their own. The reconciliation between Barbara and me was slower, more cautious. We did not move back in together for 14 months. We went to counseling. We had hard conversations. Some of them didn't resolve cleanly, and we left them unresolved and came back to them later. What I discovered over that period was that the betrayal, as devastating as it was, had cracked something open that needed to be cracked. It had forced honesty that our comfortable life had never demanded. And in that honesty there was, eventually, something that felt more like a real marriage than the one we'd been performing for 30 years. That's not a justification. What they did was wrong. But something real can grow in the soil of something terrible if people are willing to do the work. 3 years after that night in the driveway, I sat with Meredith at the kitchen table in my house and showed her the annual reports for the stores, not to hand anything over, just to show her, to let her understand what she'd almost taken and why it mattered, what 31 years of work actually looks like in numbers and in people. She looked through it quietly. Then she said, "I want to show you something." She pulled out her own numbers. A small spreadsheet, nothing impressive by my standards. 18 months of sales performance at Sandoval Properties. Her numbers, her accounts, earned one by one. "I'm not showing you this to brag," she said. And I recognized the exact words, the same ones I'd used years ago when describing the stores. "I'm showing you, so you understand that I know what it costs now. I didn't before." I nodded. "I may never be in your business," she said. "That might not be right for either of us, but I want you to know I understand it now. What you built, what you protected, why it mattered." "It mattered because it was mine," I said. "Mine and your mother's. We earned it together. It wasn't a transfer. It wasn't a right. It wasn't a right. It was a result." "I know," she said. "I know that now." The trust remains unchanged. I have no intention of altering it significantly. What Meredith inherits, if she inherits anything, will be modest, earned through years of demonstrated character, not assumed because of a name or a bloodline. That is a decision I am at peace with. What I am not at peace with, and may never be entirely, is the question of whether I could have prevented all of it. Whether I built the conditions for betrayal by building the expectation of abundance without the corresponding expectation of effort. Whether a different kind of father would have raised a daughter who never believed she could take what she hadn't earned. I don't have a clean answer to that. Barbara says I'm too hard on myself. Meredith, when I asked her directly about a year ago, said, "Dad, you gave me everything and told me it was love. It was love, but you forgot to make it conditional, not on grades or accomplishment, on character. And character is the one thing you can't give someone. They have to choose it." She was right. I think about that often. What I know is this: a man can build something extraordinary over a lifetime and lose it in an afternoon to the people he trusted most, if he's not watching, if he assumes good faith without testing it, if he mistakes love for immunity from betrayal. And a family built on expectation rather than respect is not a family. It's a waiting room. I came home early from that appointment by chance or by instinct or by whatever it is that makes a man slow his car on a particular road, on a particular afternoon. And what I found nearly destroyed me. But what I did with what I found, the decision to respond with precision rather than rage, to protect rather than simply punish, to leave a door open rather than seal it permanently, that is the part of the story I would choose again. Every time,